Sometimes you meet someone and think you've hit the jackpot only to realize later that jackpots come with their own complications. If you're enjoying this kind of raw relationship drama, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories like this one. Trust me, this one gets wild. I'm Veronica. I'm 25, and 8 months ago, I thought I'd found the perfect setup. Barry was 27, worked in tech support, made decent money, around $65,000 a year, and most importantly, he seemed eager to impress me. We met through a dating app, and from our first coffee date, I could tell he was the type who'd go out of his way to make me happy. Don't get me wrong, Barry wasn't exactly what I'd call my physical ideal. He was average height, had this slightly receding hairline he tried to hide with strategic styling, and his fashion sense was basically whatever was on sale at department stores. But he had his own one-bedroom apartment and a steady paycheck, which honestly put him ahead of most guys I'd been meeting lately. I was working part-time at this boutique downtown, making maybe $20,000 a year if I was lucky. My living situation wasn't exactly glamorous either. I shared a place with 3 roommates, splitting rent 4 ways, just to afford something decent. So when Barry started picking up every dinner check and offering to pay for my rides to his place because parking was such a hassle in his neighborhood, I wasn't about to complain. The Uber thing started innocently enough. I mentioned once that finding parking near his building was annoying, and boom, next thing I know, he's sending me $30 to $40 each time I come over, plus another $40 to $60 when we'd go out somewhere nice. Look, I could have taken the bus or walked, but why would I when he was so willing to solve the problem for me? His apartment was fine. Clean, functional, close to his work. Nothing fancy, but it served its purpose. The building looked a little dated from the outside, and the neighborhood wasn't exactly trendy, but Barry seemed comfortable there. Maybe too comfortable if you ask me. After a few months of dating, I started dropping little hints about upgrading. Don't you think it's time to move somewhere with more character, or this area is so basic? Just gentle suggestions to help him see that he could do better. Barry would usually just nod and change the subject, which was frustrating. Here I was trying to help him improve his life, and he'd act like my input didn't matter. I mean, isn't that what girlfriends are supposed to do? Help their partners reach their potential. The financial arrangement we fell into felt natural to me. He made 3 times what I did, so obviously he should cover more of our expenses. That's just basic relationship math. I was contributing in other ways. I helped him pick out some throw pillows that actually elevated his boring living room, gave him fashion advice, brought some style and sophistication to his world. Those $80 pillows I convinced him to buy completely transformed his space, but did he appreciate the value I was adding? Not really. My friends started asking questions after a few months. Jenna especially kept pushing to hang out at our place, and I was running out of creative excuses. Barry's having some work done on the apartment, only works so many times before people start wondering what kind of construction project takes 3 months. The truth was I felt embarrassed bringing my friends to Barry's basic apartment. My ex Garrett had this amazing condo in the trendy part of town with floor-to-ceiling windows and a modern kitchen perfect for hosting. We used to throw dinner parties, post these cute couple photos that got tons of likes. With Barry, I felt like I was dating down, and I hated that feeling. But the free dinners and transportation were too good to give up. I kept hoping Barry would eventually get the hint and step up his game. 8 months in, though, and he still seemed perfectly content with his mediocre lifestyle. That's when I started being more direct with my feedback. This building looks sketchy from the outside, wasn't meant to be cruel. It was an observation, a fact. I was trying to motivate him to want better for himself for us, but Barry would just shrug it off like my opinion was irrelevant. Meanwhile, I'm putting real effort into this relationship. I'm the one suggesting new restaurants, planning our social calendar, making sure we looked good as a couple on my Instagram. Barry contributed nothing creative to our dynamic. He just showed up, paid for things, and expected that to be enough. The lack of ambition was honestly insulting. I started comparing him to Garrett more often. Garrett understood that image matters, that where you live and how you present yourself reflects on your partner too. He knew that relationships require investment and growth, Barry seemed content with mediocrity, and it was dragging me down with him. The Uber expenses were clearly getting to Barry. I could see him wince slightly when I'd text, asking for ride money, especially during surge pricing. But what was I supposed to do? Show up to dates sweaty and disheveled from public transportation? I have standards, and maintaining those standards is part of being in a relationship. My roommates were getting tired of my excuses about why Barry never came over to our place either. Just bring him here, Natalie would say. But our apartment wasn't much better than his, and at least his was private. The whole situation was becoming impossible to navigate. The breaking point came when Jenna suggested a double date at Barry's place. I panicked and quickly redirected to a restaurant instead, but I knew I couldn't keep dodging forever. Something had to change, and since Barry wasn't taking any initiative to improve our situation, I'd have to force the issue. That's when I finally just said it. We were texting about the double date plans when I typed, "Can we do dinner somewhere else instead of your place? Your apartment is kind of embarrassing. I don't want to bring my friends there." I stared at that message for a few seconds before hitting send. Was it harsh, maybe? But someone needed to be direct with him about his living situation. I expected him to be hurt, maybe finally motivated to make some changes. What I got instead was, "Fair enough, let's just meet at the restaurant then." Okay, that seemed reasonable, but then I asked him to send Uber money because it was surge pricing and everything went sideways. "Actually, I think you should start handling your own transportation from now on. See you at 7. I stared at my phone. Was he serious? Over one constructive comment about his apartment, I texted back, asking if he was really going to make me take the bus, and he just said, "Sounds good. Restaurant is downtown. Bus stop is not 2 blocks from your place." The audacity was breathtaking. Here I was trying to help him see that he could do better, and his response was to punish me financially. I had no choice but to take public transportation in the rain without an umbrella because I'd never needed one in an Uber. I showed up 45 minutes late with my hair slightly frizzed from the drizzle. Jenna kept shooting me confused looks all night while I tried to keep it together in front of them. Barry sat there acting completely normal, like he hadn't just humiliated me by forcing me to take the bus. When the check came, Barry paid for his portion. Jenna's boyfriend paid for both of them. And I just sat there, staring at my part of the bill like it was written in hieroglyphics. I whispered that I didn't bring my card hoping Barry would just handle it, like always. Instead, he took a sip of his water and said, "There's an ATM across the street." In front of my friends. He actually suggested I walk to an ATM in the rain rather than just cover my meal, like any decent boyfriend would do. Jenna ended up paying for me, and the look she gave me afterward made me want to disappear under the table. For 2 weeks after that disaster, Barry stuck to his new rules. No more Uber money, split every bill. I had to take the bus to every date, showing up late and disheveled while he sat there looking perfectly put together. Twice I tried the "I forgot my wallet" approach, and both times he just shrugged and said we could wait while I went to get it or found an ATM. The texts I sent him ranged from explaining that he was being petty to pointing out that this was basically financial abuse. I was just being constructive about his apartment, and his response was to completely change our relationship dynamic without any discussion. When I told him we needed to talk, I thought a face-to-face conversation would fix everything. I'd explained that couples should want better for each other, that I was trying to help him grow. Instead, Barry sat at that coffee shop acting like I was some kind of gold digger. "You're my boyfriend," I explained. "You're supposed to take care of me." "Take care of you. You're 25, not 5. You have a job. A part-time job. You know I'm trying to focus on my influencer career." The way he looked at me when I mentioned my Instagram following was so condescending. Sure, I only had 1,800 followers, but everyone starts somewhere. My last sponsored post for that teeth whitening kit paid $50, which might not seem like much to him, but it was a start. "I can't afford to subsidize your influencer career while you insult my living situation," he said. That's when I brought up Garrett. Garrett never made me pay for anything. Something shifted in Barry's expression. Finally a reaction, but instead of stepping up like I hoped, he just said, "Then maybe you should date Garrett." Maybe I should. At least he knew how to treat a woman. Barry started to leave, and I felt everything slipping away. I started crying. Real tears, not fake ones. The humiliation of being dumped in public, of having to explain to everyone why we broke up, of going back to splitting everything 4 ways with my roommates. But Barry just walked out while I was sitting there crying. "You can't just leave. We're having a conversation," I called after him. "No, you're having a tantrum. I'm going home to my embarrassing apartment." The Instagram post felt completely justified after that. If Barry was going to treat me like garbage and abandon me in a coffee shop, people should know what kind of person he really is. I posted our picture with a caption about how he'd love bomb me for months, then turned financially abusive when I gave him constructive criticism about his living situation. I wrote about how he forced me to take public transportation in the rain and refused to pay for my dinner in front of my friends. Some of my friends were supportive in the comments, but then this girl commented, "Didn't you say last month he took you to that expensive dinner for your birthday?" I deleted that comment immediately, but the damage was done. Then my phone started ringing. It was my mom. "I'm calling about your treatment of my daughter," she told Barry when he answered. "She's an adult with a job. I'm not obligated to pay for her transportation." When a man dates my daughter, he should be prepared to provide for her. That's what a real man does. But Barry hung up on my mother, my own mother, trying to explain basic relationship dynamics, and he couldn't even show her respect. The credit card applications seemed like the only reasonable solution. If Barry wasn't going to support me through this transition, I'd handle it myself. I knew his information from all those times I'd helped him with online orders. We'd been practically living together anyway. It wasn't like I was stealing from a stranger. When I heard Barry was at the Mercedes dealership where I was exploring my options, I couldn't believe he'd called the police. I wasn't actually buying anything. I was just seeing what was possible with the new credit line I secured. But Barry showed up acting like I was some kind of criminal. Sitting in that holding cell, all I could think about was how this was Barry's fault. If he'd just been a better boyfriend, if he'd understood that relationships require investment and growth, none of this would have happened. I was driven to desperate measures by his emotional manipulation. The charges were completely excessive: identity theft, fraud, harassment. Like I was some master criminal instead of a girlfriend who got pushed too far. My mom had to borrow money from relatives to bail me out, and now everyone in our family knows about this mess. The plea deal felt like another betrayal: probation, mandatory therapy, restitution for credit monitoring services, all because Barry couldn't handle one constructive conversation about his living situation. Even my lawyer tried to argue that Barry had established a pattern of financial support and then abruptly withdrew it, causing emotional distress that led to desperate actions. But the judge looked at him like he was crazy. "Are you seriously arguing that your client committed fraud because her ex-boyfriend stopped paying for her Uber rides?" Court was the worst part. Barry sat there looking all composed and reasonable while I had to listen to him describe our relationship like I was some kind of predator. His lawyer made it sound like I was this calculating manipulator, when really I was just a girlfriend who expected normal relationship things. The no contact order felt excessive too. We dated for 8 months. Of course, we might run into each other. But apparently wanting closure is considered harassment now. 3 months later, I'm living with my mom again, and Natalie reached out with the most humiliating news yet. She'd been doing research about my dating history, talking to my old roommate from 2 years ago. Apparently there's some kind of pattern they've identified where I take advantage of boyfriends financially. The Instagram career I'd been building completely tanked. Someone sent screenshots of my arrest record to the few brands I worked with. My follower count dropped to 400 after my mugshot started circulating online. Years of building my online presence destroyed because Barry couldn't handle feedback. Even Garrett reached out, acting like he was some victim too, claiming his condo wasn't even that nice, like he was trying to rewrite our history. Please. I remember that place perfectly. The therapy sessions are pointless. The counselor keeps trying to get me to see Barry's perspective and understand why my behavior was problematic. But she doesn't understand what it's like to date someone who's content with mediocrity, someone who won't even try to improve himself for the person he claims to love. Barry's moved to some upgraded apartment, now probably dating someone new, who appreciates his adequate lifestyle. Natalie mentioned they grabbed coffee, which is perfect. My ex-roommate bonding with my ex-boyfriend over what a terrible person I am. Look, I'm not saying I handled everything perfectly. Maybe I could have been more patient with Barry's lack of ambition. Maybe I shouldn't have used his personal information for those credit applications. But this whole situation got blown completely out of proportion. All I wanted was a boyfriend who understood that relationships require effort and investment. Instead, I got arrested, humiliated, and labeled as some kind of criminal. And for what? For having standards, for wanting better than a basic apartment in a sketchy neighborhood. Barry got exactly what he wanted. He's the victim, I'm the villain, and everyone feels sorry for him. But someday he'll realize what he lost. Someday he'll understand that I was trying to help him become a better version of himself. By then, it'll be too late.